We are live. Hello, Daniela. How are
We did it.
you? We are. We're here live on LinkedIn. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Super excited to be here with you. Super excited for you to share with us all about optimizing our launches and really being able to take them to the next level because I feel like launching is something that like no matter how good you're at, it can always get better, right? Always like looking to like tweak our KPIs and how we can make it's like we know this like one tiny switch can literally cost thousands or like even millions of dollars. And so it's
Yeah,
something that like we just like always
yeah,
wanna
for
invest
sure.
in. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So thank you all for being here. Excited to introduce you to Daniela, who is a copy and marketing strategist who helps expert business owners build a fun, profitable, and sustainable launch engine. Since 2006, she's written dozens of 6 and 7 figure launches, generating over 100 million in sales for clients. And I think it's quite a bit more than 100 million.
I
And has
think
mentored,
it's probably more by now.
yeah. How do you keep track, by the way?
It's a rough estimate, but that is the revenue that I know about.
So that's why it's like really, really, really conservative. I love that. Okay. And she is mentoring business owners to break their own sales records while launching in a way that creates flow and momentum. I'm excited. Thank you so
Me
much,
too.
Daniela, for being
Thank
here.
you for having me.
I know, like with everything going on right now, that it's like making the time for this, and I appreciate you. I really do. What before we like just like get into this, what's one thing that most people don't know about you? I just love there.
One thing that most people don't know about me. So, uh, I have a degree in English literature, but that I tell people about. That's what they don't know is that I wanted to be a librarian. And in high school, I worked in the library. Like that was my after school job. And I had the Dewey Decimal System mostly memorized. It used to be a fun party trick. It used to be like, hey, where are the books on dogs? And I used to be able to give you a number. It's been a little while, but
Wow, I did
yeah.
not know that. That is super cool. And did you think you would like really do get into it?
Um, so I always thought like, okay, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to do something with the written word. And it turns out that I did because I became a copywriter. That's just not what I set out to do. And it ended up being the thing that I was meant to do, I think, in a way. And now I still use that English degree. I use a lot of creative writing techniques when I'm coaching people on copy. And so the words still make it in there. That's still my first love.
Were you like the type of person that was like writing things like from a young age and things like that?
Reading piles of books. I was writing stories in second grade. Yes, that was me.
Okay. So let's get into this because I was a little bit the opposite of you. When I was in school, I used to have my friends write my writings for me. I could not stand it. And when it came to building my business, actually, the last like big important leg of my business was actually email marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And as you probably know, this probably was a really bad decision. And it's really super important for making lots of money. And actually, at one point I decided that like, I'm just gonna go and jump in and I'm just going to do this because I know I have too many mentors, too many people told me I need to start building my email list. Once I got over that like stress of like, okay, I don't know how to do this. This is too hard. I don't like writing, all that sort of things. And I wanted to understand what actually was going on here. Like, why did I not like writing so much?
Mm-hmm.
It boiled down to a specific thinking skill. One of the 28 thinking skills, as most of you know, that's what I help entrepreneurs do to optimize their thinking skills so that way running their business is easier. And in my case, it's a thinking skill called give, it's about like explaining your thoughts in a clear and cohesive manner. right? So I had all these ideas of emails in my brain, but being able to give it over in a thoughtful, cohesive manner, that was the real struggle for me. So it's like
Mhm.
I knew what I wanted to put in my emails, I knew what I wanted to say in my sales pages, but like putting it in a clear, cohesive manner was a struggle for me. And that's why I couldn't do my writings in school, and that's why I didn't do my emails with my I didn't do my emails. And once I worked on that thinking skill, writing emails became much easier. And I actually worked another thinking skill of labeling, and that worked, and that made took emails to the next level. Not only was it easy, now it was actually fun. And now writing emails is one of my favorite parts of business. And
Oh,
I
I love
actually send
that.
out 6 emails every day, every week. Yeah, that's how much I love them.
Awesome.
So I know that there are people that are struggling with the dread of launches, like they're doing launches because that's part of like their business, or they're trying to find ways how they could do without the launches and maybe just like one-on-ones, or how they can really make launching a little bit easier. And there's certain things that are just getting in the way and making it super challenging them, and they just don't want to launch. What do you think is some of the reasons for that, Daniela?
I think in many cases, we make launches out to be like this super high stakes roller coaster, stressful, intensive, like make or break your entire business thing when it doesn't have to be, right? And that's one thing, is that it's yes, it's a live marketing event that's happening in real time. So, things can and will go wrong, as we can all attest to. But on the other hand, they do not have to be, it doesn't have to be the end. It doesn't have to be like, it's just another marketing campaign that you're running. And if you have your launching built in with your evergreen and you have your offer structured right, then launches just add the boost to what you're already doing. So first of all, launching in a sustainable way and not a, oh my gosh, if something breaks, it's the end of my business kind of mentality, right? Which I see a lot of people, it's like, oh my gosh, this has to work. Oh, it's not working. And they get really, really stressed about it, which can, also lead to that self-sabotage. They like get themselves mentally out of the game before the game is over. And I see that happen a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that they get themselves mentally out of the game before the game is over. And from my perspective, right, like I see it from like those weak thinking skills, right? With 28 thinking skills, there are going to be some thinking skills that are going to get in your way, because launching has so many components that you're bound to come across a thinking skill that's not as strong for you, and it's challenging for you. That's why when you improve your thinking skills, then working on launches is a whole lot easier. However, you, Daniela, have created a little bit of a shortcut or a little bit of a way to take it to the next level, right? Of what can you do to really optimize your launches, and what can you do to make launches as easy and feel and as much flow as possible. Um, so tell us, Daniela, how have you come to create this sort of process?
So I've been behind the scenes for a lot of launches, 7-figure launches. I've written 16 of them. So I've been behind the scenes, lots of partners, lots of moving pieces, lots of things going on. And I've seen consistently the pieces that need to be in place and where people mess up, even the, again, 7 and 8-figure businesses, where the gaps are, where things tend to fall apart. And I've put together what I call the 5 launch flows, which are essentially the things that need to be aligned for you to have a launch that feels in flow, that feels fun, that works, that doesn't feel stressful. And so those are really the 5 pieces. I'm sure there are lots of other ways of thinking about it, but I've sort of boiled it down to the 5 key things that you should be thinking about.
What I like about it is that it's not like way too overwhelming. It's like 5 key things, and there are 5 foundational things that you're probably doing already, or not probably, you are already doing on some level if you've already launched, right? And now we're really going to talk about how you can optimize it to take it to the next level. So at least most of these things you have in place, so you don't have to feel like you're starting from scratch. And you can just see what you can do to really make it easier, and to make sure that it's not just a piece, but it's in flow, right? So
Yeah,
Danielle, do you want to share with us what are the 5 launch flows?
sure. So the launch flows are cash flow, meaning what are you selling and how much are you selling it for and what's included. So your offers, are your offers dialed in? And I like what you said, because most people do have these flows in place, many of them, um, to a certain extent. But we're talking about optimizing. We're talking about something being off. We're talking about there being a missing piece. They're talking about, like, do we need to repackage? Do we need to refine? So the first is cash flow. Second one is lead flow. Like, how well do you really know your people and how are you speaking to them? And are you speaking to the right audience in a way that is resonating with them? So where are your people coming from? The third is idea flow. So that's all about your strategy and your messaging. Like, are you launching with a strategy that matches your business and matches your talents and matches your business's strengths? Because just following someone else's launch strategy when it doesn't feel good for you is not going to get you necessarily the results that you want, or it's going to cause all of that extra stress. So that's the third. Fourth is workflow. So that's your team and timing. And this is going to be a very detail-oriented person. So that's like if you are getting into the details of making sure that you have enough time to get things done. You have a nice runway. You have someone project managing, or you have all the, that everything runs like it should. And then the last one that I think people tend to either disregard or not take into account enough is energy flow. Meaning, are you managing your rest and reward for doing something as fun and hard as a launch, and your confidence with which you're showing up throughout the whole process? So how are you managing your energy and your team's energy throughout the launch? So those are the 5 flows.
I love that. And I love how you couldn't like leave out the energy, because talk about flows, right? Like you need the energy flow. And you said most definitely not very much spoken about, but I do want to start at the top and go back to offer flow. Can you just share with us, like, what does that include? What does that entail? How do we really make sure our offers and our cash flow is in the best way, set up in the best way possible?
Well, so why does someone buy an offer, right? They have to decide, okay, this is for me. I trust this person and the person making this offer, and I need to do this now. So your offer needs to essentially answer the questions, why me, why this, why now? And if it doesn't, if there's a piece missing, then it's not going to resonate with your people, right? So do you have it priced at the right price? Are the payment plans right? Is the core transformation really, really clear? Is it clear what is going to happen and what the secret sauce is? Things like, do you have the right bonus package? Are your bonuses answering objections, key objections, as opposed to just being things that you've added in because people say, oh, you should have a bonus package. Like, do they serve a purpose in moving the offer forward? And lastly, how does it fit into everything else you're selling? How does it strategically bring people into your world, escalate them, or position them to stay with you as a customer, right? So those are all things we sort of take into account when we think about offers, cash flow, launching an offer.
From my experience of just like speaking with entrepreneurs now, I don't deal with them in the same way you do, right? I do speak to them like very often as I work with them, but I'm not like their business coach and understand business on the same way. But I do tend to find that like people have a real struggle explaining their transformation. And that is a part that they get very stuck on, like finding the pricing. Some people like to price highs for like value, perceived value, low. So it's a no brainer. But really, the part of like figuring out, how do I word this transformation? How do I get this message over? What sort of transformation does this specific offer require? Is the real challenge. Can you help us with that a little bit?
And it's interesting, right? Because the words piece is where a lot of people tend to, and there's a reason why. So if this is you, if this has ever been you, there's a reason, because it is very hard to see your own stuff clearly. You have a blind spot. You can't see the label from inside the bottle. I have trouble thinking about my own offers objectively. Like I have people that I go to run stuff by. That's why we have community in business, because we get in our own heads about it. We don't really know. And articulating a transformation. It's interesting that you talked about the thinking skills that you need in order to be able to write emails, and it's being able to take complex ideas and thoughts and sort of wrangle them into words in a way that other people can understand. And that that skill, right, is even harder when you're talking about the transformation of your program, because you don't have a lot of space to actually convey that, right? You got to be like, all right, this is it, this is what it does, and you've got to capture that attention really really quickly. And so how do you imagine that? Well, I've got processes that I take people through in my programs, but the key thing to think about is okay, sell them what they want and then give them what they need, right? So often we're like, well, I know that people need this. This is what they need. This is what we're going to talk about. This is it. And it's not resonating because people are not there. They're like, no, I actually want this thing over here. And so figuring out how to bridge that gap is often where that transformation becomes much, much more compelling.
Yeah, I personally found using language that they use, like when you start seeing a pattern of what are the same words people are using over and over again, it gives a little bit of insight. Right, like reflecting back to them, like the words that they use, but really what they want. It falls back on that piece of like give them what they want. So use your messaging to use their language to give them what they want, and then in your program, you actually give them what they need. I love that. What about how to make your offer fit into like your whole offer suite and all where all your clients come in? Do you first see the gap um, in your offer suite and then create an offer, or do you first create the offer and then see how does it fit in together with all the rest of my offers and my client journey, etc.?
I think the way that I like to take my people through it is that we separate this idea of container and content, right? So what the offer is and the transformation that happens within it is almost separate from thinking about what type of offer is it, what's involved, what is the time commitment, is it a high-end coaching program, is it a low ticket offer, is it a this, like where are those pieces in your business? And then honestly, like if you're kind of doing your signature system, you're just going to teach that at different levels of support, right? If you have a coaching business. So first deciding on, okay, this is the container where most people are going to come through. This is my signature offer, whether it's high ticket or sort of mid-tier, and then you build out the other pieces around it. So that's how I would think about it. I would start thinking about the containers first.
That's really smart. Like it puts it a little bit and gives a little bit of a structure for you to be able to think about it instead of just like figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, what must be an offer so people would want to buy it? And similarly to that is like, how can I take a good offer and make it even better?
So how to take a good offer and make it better. If you have something that's been running that you have customers go through, that you have testimonials for, first of all, more testimonials from everybody, and be consistent about having a system to capture them. That's one. And
Is that
two
part of
is
the
getting,
system flow or the
yes,
workflow?
yes,
Yeah.
of course. And automating that as much as possible. So, and two is um, getting feedback from those customers, right? Not just testimonials, not just the wins, but actually asking them, okay, where are the gaps in the program? What could be better? What could be, and that's getting sort of on the delivery side, but creating a feedback loop when you already have a successful offer from the delivery side, from what people are actually going through back into the marketing, the things that they're asking for, is how you optimize.
So because we're not talking about from scratch and we're talking about this taking this from our next level, we're assuming that you already have this offer and that you have people to talk to be able to take that to the next level. I love that. What do you say is like the biggest thing that needs to be in an offer so people want to buy it?
Well, it needs to be, well, honestly, it's the transformation. It's not about, okay, you're going to get this many calls and this and this thing. You want results, right? Like, can you stop my child from waking up at night? Can you fix my leaky toilet? Can you, plug the hole? Can you help me build this thing that I want to build and do this thing that I want to do? Can you do it? How you do it is details. But the most important thing is, okay, what is the transformation that you're selling? What is the solution?
I love that. Yeah, like, but at the end of the day, you don't buy a program because it's 6 weeks or because it's 8 weeks. You buy the program because it gets you the result that you actually want.
Exactly.
So tell us, Danielle, anything else that we need to touch on before we move on to lead flow?
Let's talk about lead flow.
Let's do it.
So you know your people, right? You've done the ideal client profiles. You know who they are. If I asked you, like, who's your ideal client? You'd be able to tell me, probably. And probably if you've been doing this for a little while, it's something that goes through some evolution, right? It changes as you get smarter, as you get more people in, as you figure out how your message is landing. It changes a little bit over time. It gets more nuanced. It gets more, but how do you translate that to making sure the messaging is calling in the right people? And that is the trick of lead flow. That's the trick. Getting people in and also making sure that they have enough runway, education, time, pathways to be ready to buy as well.
So does this include messaging or is that part of cash flow?
There's a little bit of an overlap. There's a little bit of, like, messaging is, here's the secret. Messaging is in every piece of these because that is what I do. And that's sort of the foundation of the work. And I really believe that it needs to be in everywhere. And that's the secret sauce. But we talk about, okay, how does your offer, because everything is words. Your business is powered by words at the end of the day. Can you
We're talking right now.
convey in words these complex ideas? I guess graphic design, sure, like, the images, whatever, that also helps. But there are words on those images too. So we're talking, like, there's some overlap in all of these, I would say.
Fab. Okay, so what do you recommend for, like, time frames and for ways of getting leads? Like, is one way of getting leads enough, or do you recommend more than one?
If you are getting enough leads to fill your programs from that one traffic source, then that's enough. If you're not,
straightforward answer. Don't make it more complicating than it is, right?
If you are not, then, like, and that is dialed in already. Like, that machine is working. And sometimes people are gonna. It depends. So it really depends on your personality as well. And this is kind of the things where we customize in the LaunchFlow process, like, what makes sense for you. Do you have the capacity to be in tons of networking groups and, commenting on Facebook groups? Or are you the kind of person who's like, nope, I just want to pay for traffic. I don't want to talk to people. Like, just let me figure out how much I can buy a lead for and call it a day, right? So where your traffic is coming from is also going to depend on your strengths and what feels good to you. And again, if a traffic source is not working, perhaps it is not aligned with or in flow with what your strengths are.
Ooh, I like how this, it's not just like just doing it or just creating the systems for it, but it's like making sure it's aligned with you so that way it all feels in flow. Do you have specific recommendations of, like, how long or any specific tips on lead flow specifically?
How long, meaning like
How
sales
long do we need to
cycles?
have? Yeah, like, how long do we need to have, like, that runway? Like you mentioned, enough time to buy. Like, what time frame are we talking about? Things like that.
So that sort of spills over into idea flow when we talk about sort of the launch strategy and what makes sense. But
Okay.
in general, knowing your sales cycle, because it's going to be different from everybody, right? It's also going to vary based on the price point of your offer. It's a lot easier for somebody to come and say, oh yeah, I'm going to spend, $29 versus spending $2,900. And
Right.
so knowing like your typical sales cycle on your core offers is going to make a difference. So there's no one hard and fast answer. If you are doing a launch, let's say on a mid to high ticket product, generally people need, unless, again, there's different buyer types, but generally you'll want people on your list for at least a few weeks or a few months to sort of get them in and comfortable and build the relationship. So you should be emailing your list. We know this. If you are not, start now.
Don't make the mistake that I made.
There you go. And make sure that, again, with all the I don't want to get into it, but all the email stuff flying around these days, make sure those emails are good value.
Oh yeah, good value. I like what you said that. Like we first need that value before we get anything else. Just starting with the value first. You mentioned quite a bit about leaf idea flow, and I want to get into it. But one last thing: if I am not attracting the right people and I'm finding the wrong people coming in, I know that's going to be from messaging. But is there specific ways that I can tweak my messaging so I don't have to rewrite my entire sales page, my entire emails, but just do small tweaks so that way it is attracting the right person?
Yes. So a couple things you can do, because generally this happens, if your offer is not for beginners, there are just a lot of beginners out in the world and they're going to show up for your offers. Because that's who sort of most of the market is. If you're talking to people who are a little bit further along, then you need to send them signals essentially in your messaging that call them out. And so, like you said, using their own language in the copy is great. Really calling them out specifically, saying, hey, this is for established business owners, advanced businesses, really calling out sort of who it's for. And there was a third thing, but I forgot.
Okay, when you remember it. But I will
Yeah.
say, meta version of this, like what we're doing right now, it's not like how to set up your offers. It's like how to optimize your offers, right?
Yeah.
That automatically is calling certain people.
I remembered it, and you probably have an explanation. It's if in your marketing you are speaking to a higher level client or ideal audience, and you're talking about the struggle, like, oh, it's so hard. Not everybody is necessarily struggling, right? We're talking to people who are, oh yeah, things are going well, and I want to just blow them up. I want to just make it bigger, make it better, make it more of what is already working. And sometimes we tend to talk about, oh yeah, and the problem is this, and this is broken, and this is not working, and this is painful. Yes, but there's also a universe in which talking about, hey, here's how we optimize it, make it better, will resonate more with people who are not necessarily solving an acute problem or just like ready to take it to the next level.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like being aware of who your ideal client is and making sure that your messaging is really using the language and using, and I is helping them self-identify with that's my issue.
Mm. Okay, well, I would say figure out what are the, and I have an application for my program. So I say, like, are you a business owner doing XYZ, selling at least a course or coaching program of at least $1,000? Yes, that's me. No, it's not. And so, like, the first question, I'm saying, these are the key criteria that I need. If it's not you, that's okay. I've got something else for you. You can start here, but this program is not for you. So being able to call people out right away and just say, like, hey, this is, and you're doing people a favor, because you don't necessarily want to sell everyone or to sell somebody into something that's not necessarily right for them.
100%. 100%. Yeah, like filtering out essentially what is what. I know personally, like I've bought programs that like I'm very happy that I brought it, but I would have preferred I would have bought it a little later or at a different part of my journey,
Mm-hmm.
simply because it would have fit me better. So if you can communicate that to them, then you're serving yourself and you're serving everyone else in your program, but you're also serving them better. I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to idea flow. What's that one about?
So Idea flow is all about both the strategy and the messaging. It's how those complex thoughts in your brain make it out into a launch process that people can go through and get to the other side. I tend to describe launching or any sort of sales process like a bridge. You've got people here on one side with the thing that they're trying to solve, and you want them over here on the other side, credit card in hand, going like, yes, please take my money. And on that bridge are lots of planks. It's a wood bridge. If you're missing a plank or two or three, your people are not going to make it across. They are going to fall in the water or down the canyon, and that is going to be very sad. So making sure you have that flow of ideas that create your sales narrative, and you do it in a way that sort of meets your people where they are with the right strategy.
I love that analogy. You could tell you're a writer. Tell me what sort of planks. What are those ideas on those planks? Examples of what might be there.
So the way that I teach this is the concept of a launch narrative. There are 4 pieces to it. There are 4 key pillars, and it's problem, story, discovery, solution. And once you learn this framework, this is like the only copy framework you'll ever need in most cases. But it's this idea that in order to be ready to buy, again, sales is all about belief change, right? Why me? Why this? Why now? And they have to believe it by the other side, right? We have to like have some sort of hope, like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm not sure, but I believe enough to put my money where my mouth is and say yes to this thing. And those beliefs generally require some changing. And so those planks in the bridge are, how are you changing those beliefs so that someone can believe that change is possible for them?
So, can you just repeat what you said? The only copy is. I know that was giving away everything, but I want everyone to
yes.
catch.
Well, it requires just a bit more like explanation and deep dive than I think we have time for here.
Okay,
But
sure.
problem, story, discovery, solution.
So
So
it's
talk
4
about
steps: problem, story, discovery, solution.
solution. The problem they're having, describe it accurately. Talk about why, tell your story in a way that positions you as the person to fix it. The discovery that changed everything, why it's not this thing that they thought, it's actually this, and then present your solution.
Okay. Okay. I think that on a very high level, that makes a lot of sense. And if you think about those, going back to that planks where the original
Exactly.
question came from, it's like each one of those. I appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
Amazing. What do you think people tend to leave at the most when it comes to idea flow?
Biggest mistakes that I see when it comes to strategy are choosing to launch in a way that does not feel good to you. Choosing a
Ooh.
strategy or a way of doing things because it's somebody else's step-by-step process that worked for them. And it's like, well, okay, you've got to do this. You've got to go live on Facebook 10 bajillion times, and you've got to, have a masterclass that looks like this, and you've got to have a thing that looks like this, and you follow the steps. And on some level, you're uncomfortable with what's happening because it's not aligned, because you don't also fully understand how it works underneath, like
Mm.
behind the just do the things, like why are we doing those things? And there's something also perhaps not aligned in the strategy that worked for someone else. It doesn't just like, doop, let's plop it in your business and okay, it's going to work the same. Because it's not. You're different. Your business is different. Where you are is different. And that energy might work. Like there are people who, okay, I use the step-by-step process and it worked for me. But there are also the people that it doesn't work for. And so my philosophy is you need the fundamentals stay the same, but you need the
Mm.
recipe that's going to work for you. You need the strategy that's going to work for you. And if it doesn't feel in flow, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it.
So like the flour, egg, sugar is the same, but like the amounts and whatever other things you're mixing in and what your actual recipe will be different. I like that. I like that so much. I'm curious, in LaunchFlow, your program, when you really help people get into flow, do you really find like that people have different strategies and that their whole idea of flow is different?
Absolutely. And it's funny because within the program, I teach a bunch of different launch recipes. Like here are a bunch of different ways that you can do this, from I'm just going to send email to I'm going to do a whole big launch with a bunch of moving parts and it's going to take a month, right? Like, and everywhere in between. And everyone comes up with a different custom strategy based on the questions that we ask together and the sort of the options that are available. There's a lot of things in marketing that work. You know that, I know that. There's a lot of strategies that can work and do work for people. So it's a matter of figuring out what is going to work for me and my business.
Yeah, I love what you said there. You said how like you give the recipes, but then you also have something custom for them. So people have this specific strategy to launch this specific program, but they also understand the psychology and like what's actually going on here, so they can apply it to other strategies in the future, other launches in the future, depending what they're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
it just like brings me back to what you said earlier, how like sometimes people try things, but they don't actually understand what's going on here. And so like they're doing the actions, but it's not really doing anything because they're just it's
It's not
the
connecting.
yeah, exactly. It's a surface without it all connecting. I like that. I like that so much. How does one make sure that their messaging is moving people along those planks on the bridge without it just being like urgency, buy now, I need to do this, like do everything else that
Mm-hmm.
everyone else is talking about?
Well, so we talk about the bridge, and we've got our bridge here. We want people not to feel like they're being pushed across. We want them to be walking across and feeling like, oh, yeah, I get it. I'm going. Let's go. And we want that to feel really, really natural. And so a lot of this language, and also a lot of the reason that people feel discomfort with the ways that we're told to launch, is there's a lot of that fake urgency, the, you know, shouty copy, and call it, without having done the nuanced work of building that bridge beforehand. It's like, oh, there's a thing. They just rely on urgency without doing the work that's needed beforehand to actually make that transformation clear, to answer the why me, why this. The why now is the urgency piece, but you've got the other two pieces there that you have to answer. And so how do you do that without sounding like everybody else? Interrogate, use a big word, but like interrogate your phrases, right? So think about we talk about going to the next level. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Everybody defines that differently. Everybody uses that and goes, and so if you ask the question or have someone ask you, well, what does that actually mean? And someone starts talking, and I have this happen over and over again when I work with clients, is they go, no, it's actually this. And they'll tell me the story, and I'll be like, well, that's your copy right there. It's not here on the page, but you actually just told me the thing that you need to put on the page. So good, take this transcript and go do that.
I like that. I like that so much. And I can honestly say, from working on those emails and working on that thinking skill that I told later on, about the labeling, that is where it is. Like, I use the term labeling, but I like the way you use that term of defining, like, analyze. What do you use?
Interrogating.
Interrogating. Yes.
Yeah, it's a little...
Interrogating. Good word. Your phrases, because it really makes you like have to think about and like understand, why are you using this sort of word, and there's a reason for it. And either you just never thought about it, and so like you don't have a better word, and so you haven't thought through the process of what's actually going on here, and you can come up with a better word, like you said, come when you say that story. And sometimes you just get to understand what you're doing, how it's different than other people. I feel like it gets a little bit more root. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Workflow.
Yeah.
How does that? Tell us about that one.
Workflow is the details, right? Because I feel like in a lot of programs, you've got the strategy in many cases, you don't have the copy. Like you've got some templates and that's it. You're like, here you go, do this, and then here's my templates. But there's no real thought about like the messaging in the deep way that we do it. And the details of like, okay, it actually might take longer than you think to launch this thing. It generally will. I generally find people like have ambitious launch dates and that's what puts them into the, oh my God. Whereas if they said, hey, this is going to take an extra 2-3 weeks, maybe 4, they could breathe a little bit and not have it be so stressful. And also just figuring out, does it have to be you doing all the things? And if you have a team, are you the one managing that team? Like, are you the one making things happen? Is there a software that can shortcut things? Is there ways that AI can shortcut things? But really figuring out all of the moving pieces, because again, launches are live marketing events and you've got to have your pieces in place, right? And redundancies. That's the other thing, is like, well, okay, if this breaks, what's our backup? And having that in mind as well in advance. When we're working behind the scenes on the 7-figure launches, there was always like a backup plan. There was always thinking, okay, what happens if everything goes right and we like blast through our goals? What would we need in order to actually handle that? And then on the flip side, thinking, okay, let's say nothing goes right. What would we actually need to do in that situation as well? So planning for like both contingencies and actually thinking through in advance what you would do in those situations. So that's workflow.
I love that. First of all, it's like being prepared, but also when you are forced to think in the two extremes, your brain comes up with these creative ideas that you've never thought of before. So whether you need to like go one extreme or the other extreme, you have these creative ideas that really in general just like up level your whole
Love
launch.
the
So
brain science in there too. It's like the why of why these exercises actually are beneficial.
like what
Also.
you're doing that works so well and like why I love what you do. It's not just like copy paste. There's a reason for it and I just love it. I just love it. What when you say people not having enough of a detailed plan, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So, okay, people think, okay, I need emails for my launch, right? Need emails. In theory, yes. But how many emails? When are they getting sent? Who are they getting sent to? What happens on the back end in terms of segmentation and tagging? Like people get added to lists, get unadded to lists. Do we need slightly different versions of these emails for someone else? So getting into the details of a project, which as a copywriter, when I'm writing campaigns, I have to think through because I'm like, how many emails are writing? I don't know. I need to figure this information out in order to be able to write them. And so when you're on that implementation level, the questions that come up around the details in many cases tend to come up as you're doing the thing. You're just like, oh, there's emails, we'll figure it out. But actually getting to that level of detail before you get to that task means that, oh, okay, we know exactly how many emails we need and we know how long it's going to take to write them and we know how long it's going to take and who needs to do the tagging on the back end. And we've planned for that contingency.
I feel like this is the part where so many people get stuck or overwhelmed or frustrated. It's because, like, okay, I could do emails, right? Like, that's not a big deal. But then when they actually sit down to write those emails and they're like, who's this going to? What part of the process? When are they getting it? And there's just like way too much like to figure out that when it comes into the creative zone of trying to like write it, it's just too big of a task and it gets very overwhelming and just
Right.
it becomes a lot more of a dread.
That is why we separate again container and content. So figuring out the container, like how many emails, who are they going to, when are they getting sent, what are all the details of that versus what needs to be in them is 2 separate stages of the process. And I've got processes that I walk in templates for people to figure those things out.
Literally, if you want to talk about brain geeks, it's like that's you're working in different parts of your brain. And so this is like literally talk about alignment and flow, right? Like so often we like give ourselves like tasks to do and we're just like jumping from place to place and it, literally mentally like it's super draining and then physically and emotionally it's mentally draining. And when we can organize our tasks in a way where it's in alignment. It's actually not really easy, but it's actually fun.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's the key is two different parts here, but the creative part versus the detail oriented part. Just separate the tasks.
I love it. I love it. Anything else on workflow before we get into energy flow?
So the question is, I know some people are like, it's just me. Some people are like, it's me and a VA. And some people tend to have a bigger team already in place. And just at each level, sort of making sure that you have the right person in the right seats. And even if it is just you, considering the possibility that it does not have to be just you, sooner rather than later, because it can save you a lot of time that could be better spent on higher leverage activities. So this is not like a how to hire and manage a team talk. This is not it. This is a small piece of the process. But one of the best things that I did for my business was bringing on that first team member, like game changer. So I will just say that and leave it there.
Okay. So we have obviously have those people that already have team members in place, and I'm sure there's quite a few people watching that are like, yes, I need to make sure that person A knows they're doing A and person B knows they're doing B. But I do want to take a moment, just like a moment, to talk to the person who is still at their solopreneur space, and they've done successful launches, but they've done everything. Is there any specific recommendations you can do to tell them and what sort of person to hire for the launch, or what they can do for themselves to show up in the wearing like the different hats for their space?
Yes. So showing up with different hats is potentially compartmentalizing things by day. Like, okay, today is going to be a writing day. Today is going to be a tech setup day. Today is going to be a what, and being able to focus on that. Okay, I'm wearing the copywriter hat today. Let me go do that. In terms of hiring and figuring out who's going to take that off your plate, what do you really hate doing? Do you really hate being in the back end of ActiveCampaign and ConvertKit or whatever and tagging and figuring out? You're like, I don't want to do that ever again. Then hire a tech VA. If you hate being on social media and creating graphics and writing posts, hire a social media VA, right? If you really don't want to do either, hire two people. So again,
I love how simple you make it. Just like, what do you hate? Don't overcomplicate
this. Because the time and energy that, and again, it's easier said than done, right? But really, if you think about the opportunity cost of the time and negative energy that you will generate by doing something that you don't actually want to be doing versus could I take those 2 hours, and I think it's worth spending time on copy and refining your messaging and your strategy and your conversion sales pieces. That is time well spent versus tagging things in your email service provider and tinkering with graphics. I would rather be doing that because it's busy work, but think is this the thing that's going to do it for me? High leverage. And some of us, are doing them because, there's no one else. But right. Are you a CEO? Or do you want to be one? And if you are, that requires delegating to either a person or a software.
I like that, person or software. And I appreciate you sharing that. Sometimes we just want to do the busy work because it's easier, but it's not the high leverage work. And maybe that's the reason you're not making more money. Just maybe pointing that out there. Let's move on.
I will say, I have to say this. I do think that copy, messaging, sales are one of the highest leverage skills that you can have in business. If you have to pick one to get really good at, have it be this, because it essentially means that you can make money on demand.
Just like we said, everything starts with the communication, right?
There you go.
Exactly. Back to the beginning there. So now that everybody knows that they are going to work on their copy skills, it's just a must, no matter where you're at. Tell us a little bit about energy flow.
So energy flow is a little bit trickier to define, and because it means something different, I think, for everybody, but it's really influenced by all the other 4 flows. So I explain it like this. If I told you before your launch even started that you were going to knock it out of the park, you were going to blow past your goal, you were going to fill your program, you were going to crush it, or however you want to say it, how would you show up for that launch? How would you feel and how would you show up?
That is a good question. I like it because it
Right?
puts you in that state before you're even there. And then what happens is you automatically show up like that and you're doing the tasks that you need to do to it. And then it actually is what happens.
Exactly. And I think like we get, because a launch is high stakes, like I'm not going to go, we get into the what ifs, like, oh no, what if? And it affects our energy. Same thing of like, you start it and it's not going well, or something it's not going exactly as we planned. And we get in our head, the stories run and you're like, oh, and that affects your energy too. The other piece of it is, so that's the confidence piece. That's the like, how am I showing up so I can sell the crap out of this offer?
Can before you get to the other piece, can you talk about that piece a little bit of like when things aren't going as much as you thought they would, what can you do? Either what can you prepare for beforehand, like in case,
Mm-hmm.
or also when you're in that moment, what can you do to like make sure you stay strong in the zone of
Well, so one is doing that exercise of like, well, okay, what could possibly go wrong and what am I going to do in that case? So you have the playbook.
Mhm.
And 2 is having people. Have at least 2 or 3 people that think you're amazing and will get on a call with you and tell you that you are amazing, and just like give you back some of that positive energy. Like, no, you've got this. You're right. Whatever it is that you need to get back into that, this is all going to work out. And also remembering that at the end of the day, it's all a big experiment. Business is one big experiment, and there's a lesson in every piece of data and result that you get.
Yeah, I like that until like it's like, oh, I was hoping to make X amount of money from it. But like when you look at it instead of like, I need the cash now versus like this is an experiment, it actually the whole perspective shift makes it more fun.
Mm-hmm. You're like, well, what am I going to learn from this? What am I building so that next time will be better? Because it's all
Yeah,
about that optimization, right?
I love
You're
it.
not
Okay, so
launching just to launch once and be done.
right, exactly. Even I'm going to add to that. Even if you never launch this product again, you've learned the lessons from this launch for whatever launch you launch.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so tell us. You said that was one component to energy flow. What's the second part?
So the other component is like you and your physical energy.
Mhm.
So how are you, because people like, there's so much to do. Oh my gosh, we're rushing, we're writing emails at the last minute, we're loading we're like not sleeping, burning the candle at both ends. And then you get to the launch and you're like, toothpicks, please, to hold my eyes open. um, that's not good. That creates that negative feedback loop. And you're like, I don't like launching. Launching makes my body and my nervous system not feel good. So why would I do this again? And knowing that, yes, it's going to be some hard work. Yes, there are going to be some periods of like where it's going to be a little bit more intense, where it's going to stretch you outside your comfort zone, but building in the rest and the reward. So I tell people to think of 3 ways that they're going to rest during their launch, and 1 way that they're going to reward themselves after.
So what would that what are some examples of how that might look like of what that
So making sure, like during my launches, go on hikes with my family. I spend time in the kitchen. I go out to, lunch with friends. I do things that replenish my energy during the launch. Um, and, LaunchFlow, that's really what it's all about, like being able to both do this and live your life and do things that you enjoy. I had someone say to me, oh, I had a question for you, but I'll save it because you're in launch mode. And I'm like, no, send it. Like, I'm good. I'm cool.
I am not staying up till 4 a.m. because of this launch, answering DMs or getting on sales calls, right?
Right? Like, no. And my post workshop sushi is a tradition. So I love sushi. It's my favorite thing. Every time I do a launch flow workshop, I get myself sushi.
I like that. I like the
Very
fact that it's
Pavlovian. It's like, all right, you do a good job here. You do this. You get through this. You get sushi.
what I like so much about it is the tradition into it and like the routine that like happens every time. I feel like it adds that little bit of fun to it instead of like, oh, I'm just gonna get myself a treat and one day it's ice cream, one day it's I think
Hmm.
I'm gonna have to apply
It's a
that one.
ritual.
I like it. A ritual. That's the word I was looking for. Yes. Cool. I love that. I know that you work with people on all these launch flows and really help them. People make sure they're in that flow and in alignment with all 5 launch flows. Can you tell us a little bit about the launch flows? About launch flow.
Yeah. So I work with people in a program called the LaunchFlow Accelerator, and we actually have a new cohort starting next week. So doors close, applications close this Thursday. Um,
Mm.
so if you are saying like, oh, vibing with this style of how to do launches, I would love to chat with you about it. Um, and you can hop on my calendar, dwcopy.com/launchflow. We'll put it in the comments too, so we can chat. Essentially, the program is we are going to walk through all of these 5 launch flows that we just talked about and really customize them for you and your business. Maybe you're almost there and it's just things that need a little tweak. It's not go follow the step-by-step process and implement something entirely new. It's let's optimize what you are already doing in a way that gets you those exponential results and in a way that feels much more fun and in flow that you can repeat. And that's what we're all about.
So it's a 6-week program, right?
Yes, 6-week program. Um, it's a small cohort, so you're getting lots of attention. You get to Slack me like personally whenever you want. Um, and I will
Like you can
answer.
read all my copy and make sure that it's like attracting the right people and
Yes.
making sure my
Uh-huh.
offer is like, and then my energy is in line. Then you're gonna get on a call with me if things go wrong.
All all the things. Yeah, so it's a very small cohort. We're going to be helping each other out and walking through each of these pieces, and I will get to know your business. And we're really going to make sure that each of these flows is aligned in a way that gets you the launch results that you want in a way that also feels good.
I absolutely love it, and I love the fact that you get the personal attention while you also have like this cohort. So you're doing it together with friends, and like you're building this together with people. Who do you say is best fit for this program?
So like I said, someone who's selling a course or coaching program of at least $1,000 price point. And you have some sort of audience somewhere. It could be a small audience, a small email list, a small following, but you've got to have some sort of list somewhere to launch to. We are going to grow that audience. We're going to figure out strategies to grow that audience. And you may have launched before, maybe not, but you are working with clients in some way and you want to get more leverage out of your programs. That tends to be the thing that sort of unites everyone in the cohort is they want to get more leverage out of their group programs, their one-to-many programs by doing a launch.
I love that. And the link to that is
Link to that is dwcopy.com/launchflow.
oh, I like that. It's easy to
LaunchFlow.
remember. dwcopy.com slash
Copy.com/launchflow.
fantastic. And we will make sure that gets into the comments. Is there anything else important that you think people should know, either about the 5 flows in general or about your program launch flow?
I think we took a pretty deep dive into those flows there. Such a good conversation, and I love the way that it overlaps with the work that you're doing and getting sort of insights on how the processes and the things that I'm teaching people actually align with those brain best practices. That's
Yes.
very cool to
Oh,
see.
yeah. There's a reason I'm not just like talking to you just because like I'm talking to you because you're launching something, but because like I actually like and I like what you do on that deeper level, and that's why I wanted to go into it deep so people could really understand it. So thank you so much, Daniela, for being here. I know that you're around hanging out here, answering questions. If people would put things in the comments later on,
Sure.
and I do really hope that if you are listening to this and you are looking for ways to optimize your own launch or get your launch off ground, if for some reason you didn't get it off yet, Daniela is there to help you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Fabulous.